It's the mother of all talk shows. It's the mother of all talk shows. It's the mother of all talk shows. Go get 'em, George.
George Galloway, and the mother of all talk shows. Welcome to the Open University of the Airwaves with George Galloway.
It's war between the mother of all talk shows and Adidas. More details later. It's war against Keir Starmer, who is again robbing Britain's old age pensioners, moving secretly American nuclear weapons onto our soil without notice to Parliament and a total refusal to explain to the public. It's war in the Middle East, where Palestinian children are now being massacred in such lurid details, splitting children in half, blowing fetuses out of the birth canals of their shattered and destroyed mothers, that the British press has finally discovered the genocide going on in Palestine. Is it peace, though, in Istanbul? We'll investigate all of that. Zelensky's team has arrived in Ankara, but will they still be Zelensky's team when they get back? It's all coming up here on the mother of all talk shows. Stay tuned.
Curious about our curriculum? Have something to say? Then call us now to join the debate on the mother of all talk shows. The only education you can get for free. George Galloway, the mother of all talk shows. With George Galloway, the world is our classroom, and you're welcome to sit in and join the seminar.
The boycott list is pretty easy for me. I've never drunk Coca-Cola. I abhor the very idea of McDonald's. The idea of sitting in a Starbucks and people staring at me for the breach of the boycott would definitely ensure that I would stay away. But boycotting Adidas is much more difficult for me. But I declare tonight a total boycott of Adidas, on which I have spent thousands, maybe tens of thousands, over decades for my 6 fashion and sports conscious youngsters. My children, and thereafter my grandchildren, will no longer be your customer, Mr. Adidas. It was a pity that you decided to discontinue the contract with Bella Hadid, the half Palestinian American model, last year. And I declared a boycott on you then. And then a period of unclarity ensued. Nobody knew if you were dropping her or not as a result of her stand against the genocide in Gaza. But yesterday, you declared that Bella Hadid will never darken your door again. Who is Bella Hadid? It's important that you should know this because her family's story is not just in microcosm. The story of the Nakba, the catastrophe of the wiping of Palestine off the map. It is, in its human terms, a measure of everything that was to become. Bella Hadid's father, a Palestinian from Haifa, was a part of a family with a big house in Haifa. And when Jewish refugees from Europe began to arrive in the beginning of the colonization, after the Holocaust, after the Second World War, the Hadid family welcomed these Jewish refugees into their home. And 2 years later, those same Jewish refugees kicked the Hadids out of their own home and turned them into refugees and into a refugee camp and thence to the United States of America. Bella Hadid, an astoundingly beautiful young woman, had a glittering career as a fashion model, as a makeup model, as a personality. She could, as only half a Palestinian, have forgotten about her roots. She could have made the kind of half-hearted gestures that so many people like her in the fashion, music, movie industry have done, but not Bella and her sister Gigi. They have been all guns blazing throughout this genocide, calling it out for what it is. And long before the vast majority of people in the world, they were drawing attention to the disaster, the catastrophe, the Nakba that is going on in Palestine, not just in Gaza, but now in the West Bank, about which more later. And so, having hired her, notwithstanding her ethnicity, notwithstanding her political track record, they bowed like the local radio station LBC in Britain this morning that forced James O'Brien into the most humiliating, excruciating apology for reading out a text which contained the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. They made him stand there with a sackcloth and ashes, like the Cultural Revolution in China, wearing a dunce's cap. O'Brien was forced to and agreed to make the most abject, obeisant public apology to the Israel lobby. The Hadids have never done anything like that. And so we have an obligation to add adidas, was already there anyway, but to redouble our efforts on boycotting adidas. It doesn't help that other sports good manufacturers are equally culpable. But for me, my number one target now, and it pains me because I like their products. It pains me because my football teams wear their kit. It pains me because I have 6 children that I'm now inflicting fashion pain on. But we're going to do it. And I hope everyone who watches this monologue will do it also. Of course, the massacres of the innocents in Gaza are infinitely, exponentially more important. And it's to them I now turn. I have seen footage. I mean, I know I say this every week, but I have seen footage today that I found virtually unbearable to watch. I have been looking at hospital floors soaked, sailing in blood, with little children, limbless little children, burst, split little children, with their entrails lying on the floor beside them. I have been watching little children wriggling in agony with doctors who have no medicine with which to treat them. I have seen children being carried out of tents as burnt offerings. Just today, just the death toll today. Never mind yesterday, and tomorrow will be no different. And therefore, it has to be called what it is. This is a Holocaust. It has slipped from slaughter to genocide to a veritable Holocaust. But the amazing thing is, as if a memo went out, maybe it did, all of the British papers, all of them, on the same day, on their front page, are carrying the images of this Holocaust. It's as if the Western governments decided that this had reached such peak Treblinka, such peak Auschwitz, that they were running a serious risk in continuing to be associated with it. And I hope that they are right. Perhaps they thought their risk was losing their public, that the public had decisively moved in the way that is palpable to anyone who is on the streets as I am. It is palpable that there is a massive movement in Britain, and I surmise right across the Western world, a total rejection of our involvement in this Holocaust. But maybe, just maybe, they sensed the width of future justice for those who collaborated, participated, and otherwise enabled this Holocaust to continue for almost 2 years. For somebody my age, these kind of pictures were what we grew up with. They are responsible, these pictures, for my eviscerating hatred for fascism, for Nazism, and if I'm being honest, for Germany. It was these pictures, these Belsen horrors, as we grew up calling them, that made me a lifelong anti-fascist. And maybe they've just realized that this is a new generation of these pictures, and that moreover these pictures are far more widely distributed than the pictures I grew up seeing, which were black and white in fading newspaper that would be tomorrow's fish and chip wrappings. But these images will remain crystal clear, digital, and completely universal, completely global. And what everybody said and what everybody did during this Holocaust will be available to future generations at the touch of a button. Who's my member of parliament? Joe blogs. Let me see how Joe voted. Let me see what Joe said. Who's that columnist in that newspaper? Touch a button. Let me see what they had to say when this Holocaust was raging. That television presenter, that celebrity, that actor, let me see what they said and what they did. They won't have to wait for the judgment day for people to sit in judgment on them or posthumously upon their reputation. When Ozzyosbourne of Black Sabbath passed away yesterday, I felt no scintilla of regret for his passing, because at the touch of a button, I could see his unremitting support for this Holocaust in Gaza. I could see the letter that he organized other people to write in support of this Holocaust in Gaza. That's the new future, ladies and gentlemen, what you did and what you did not do will forever, at the touch of a button, be available to any and all with the curiosity to want to know. So maybe that too is responsible for the Times, the Mirror, the Guardian, and the Daily Express, for God's sake, running the same front pages. That the reckoning is nigh. The reckoning begins now. We intend to hold all of you responsible for this catastrophe to account, and forever, until the day you die, and long after you die, upon your reputation, we will visit you over and over again. The genocide became a Holocaust, and therefore anyone still denying it is that dread word, Holocaust denier. You will not be able to escape, I promise you. Now, Zelensky's men arrived in Ankara today. By now, they're probably in Istanbul, but are they any longer Zelensky's men? Because after killing 1 million of his compatriots, after seeking to destroy the church in Ukraine, after destroying all democracy, human rights, civil rights, rights of all kinds, after murdering Gonzalolira in his dungeon, after causing the complete destruction of his country with 9 million people outside the country, with more than 1 million dead in his country, with the complete demolition of much of his country's infrastructure, with the loss of more than 1/3 now of his country's territory. Finally, the worm has turned. When President Trump said today that he was investigating $350 billion of American aid that has gone missing and cannot be accounted for in the Ukrainian theater, when he said this money was meant to be for weapons and equipment, but somehow, said Trump, I don't think it was all spent on weapons and equipment. When the Economist and the Financial Times and the Spectator that had hailed Zelensky as the new Churchill, as the man of the year, with his picture in his fatigues, everywhere in the world, picking the pockets of every group of taxpayers in the world, when they suddenly discovered, again, like a memo went out, perhaps it did, that Zelensky was a chiseling little crook, that Zelensky was a thieving little rat, that Zelensky, elected on a promise of peace with Russia, had instead brought war with Russia and lost the war that he wanted and tried so hard to foment. Now the worm has turned. Nobody in their right mind would put money on Zelensky still being there when that delegation in Istanbul gets back to Kiev. I have no doubt that Zelensky is not much longer for this world. I hope, because I should wish death on nobody. I mean that metaphorically, but it might be literally. If Zelensky does not leave with his black bin bags filled with the very last bits of corruption he can carry with him, he has multiple, multi-million-dollar homes to take the bin bags to. But he's a young man, and who knows what the rest of his life has in store for him. But if he's not lucky, his own people will put a bullet through his head. And thereafter, all that happened over these last years will be blamed on him personally. For viewers of an older vintage, he'll be Ulbricht. Once Ulbricht fell as the communist leader in Poland, everything was the fault of Ulbricht. Everything will turn out to have been the fault of Zelensky. And those who have given Zelensky their country's money and their unending support will get the blame too. Which brings me to Keir Starmer. Keir Starmer has just announced that the pension provision in Britain, formerly 65 for men and 60 for women, then 67 for all, men and women, has now announced that when you're 67, you're only going to get 25% of your pension, and you'll have to wait until, if you're lucky, you're 72 to get the rest of your pension. This is theft from the oldest people in the country. The very old people that he's hoping to encourage to climb into a pod and shuffle off this mortal coil in a mercy killing for the profit of private companies who'll carry it out. So you'll work either until you are dead, or you will live in total poverty between the ages of 67 and 72, and 5 years is a lot when you get to that age. Trust me on that. And when you're 72, the pressure will start to build, and that pod will be made to look more and more attractive. This thief Starmer, this killer Starmer, Zelensky's biggest fanboy, who seems to have some pretty unusual Ukrainian acquaintances. If you get my drift, there's no D notice on me. What happened to these 3 Ukrainian rent boys that set fire to Starmer's car, Starmer's former home? Why are the media covering this story up? Starmer loves a Ukrainian, particularly on his front door. He is responsible, as was revealed unknowingly this week, in a juxtaposition that will lead one or other of them, I hope, to The Hague one day. David Lammy told Parliament, where it is literally a crime to tell a lie. David Lammy, the Foreign Secretary, told Parliament that Britain was not assisting Israel with its surveillance flights flying daily from Cyprus. At the same time, the dwarfish Ms. Eagle, they're twins, I don't know which is which, and I don't care, told the Friends of Israel at the same time on video that Britain had been assisting Israel with its daily surveillance flights for the whole of this catastrophe of the last 21 months. So one of them was lying. The ogre or the dwarf was lying. We either were assisting Israel or we were not assisting Israel. Both of these statements cannot be true. Which one was lying? My money is on the ogre. But to cap it all, the same David Lammy, Keir Starmer's Foreign Secretary, told the television yesterday, when asked if it's true that American nuclear weapons had been secretly moved to Britain, he said the question was entirely inappropriate, and it would be inappropriate for the British government to answer. Which of course means yes, it's true. Which means that Britain has now made itself even more of a nuclear bullseye in any conflict that breaks out between NATO and the Russian Federation. Now, you may well have been ready to go quietly into that good night. I'm not myself. But what cannot be denied is that no country can call itself a democracy when a foreign country can secretly place nuclear weapons on its soil. We officially became a vassal state of the United States of America the moment the United States of America was secretly allowed to bristle our countryside with the very nuclear weapons that might be the end of all of us. It's going to be the mother of all talk shows tonight. I promise you. Stay tuned. Let's go to our old friend Declan in Dublin, who's online too. Go ahead, Declan.
Right, George. There's a very big protest in the town of Chay, the last Christian village on the West Bank. If they lose this, they are finished in the Holy Land. I'd like to take the chance to salute Francesca Albanese, who is the greatest woman, I think, of our generation. And the hope is
Amen.
that there are other Francesca Albaneses out there who will do something, because the Western churches, the Catholic Church especially, and the other main churches are doing absolutely nothing for their co-religionists in the Holy Land, just like they did nothing for them in Syria or in Iraq.
They don't even talk about them, never mind do anything. And all these Christian politicians, and all these Christian leaders, and most of the Christian clergy haven't done or said even jack to come to their aid. They're not Christians, most of these politicians. When they say they're Christians, better count your spoons, or better still, count the burning Christian houses.
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
My daughter Lucy just messaged me that I'm looking like a gangster from The Sopranos, to which I replied, you say that as if it's a bad thing. Now, our poll this evening, will Obama be charged over Russiagate, yes or no? You can vote on my Telegram channel, t.me/George Galloway, on my X, on the YouTube community poll, or on the YouTube stream. If you're watching on the YouTube stream, please subscribe to my channel. Give the thumbs up to the show and tell all your friends that we are broadcasting live shortly with the great Gerald Celente of Trends Journal. You can vote, as I say, on those portals. 22,000 people have already voted, and I'm only just now announcing it. Will Obama be charged over Russiagate? Well, there's a very large measure of disbelief that he will be charged over Russiagate. I'll be asking Gerald about that in just a minute. If you want to call the show, it's toll-free in the United States and Canada. +1 844 944 3344 is the number to call. It's free of charge in Britain and Ireland, 08081 965522, and the worldwide number is 0044203 966 2625. Gerald Celente, one of our most popular guests, a real New Yorker, if he'll forgive me saying so. Colourful, and absolutely trenchant. Who better to ask about the look over there that is being wonderful, Gerald, wonderful. Now we're both like people, the characters from the Sopranos, you from your Florida days and me from Chicago. But the look
Bronx
over there
days,
is obvious.
Bronx. I'm a Bronx guy, a Napolitano from the Bronx.
Gerald, it's obvious to a blind man that Trump is seeking to divert attention from his catastrophe over the Epstein affair to the Obama affair. Me, I can chew gum and walk in a straight line at the same time. I'm interested in both the Epstein affair and the Obama affair, the Russiagate affair. But I have a very strong feeling, as do our audience in the poll, that actually Trump's going to do nothing about either of these affairs. How does it look to you?
It's the cover of your Trends Journal magazine this week. Public opinion, outraged that Trump won't release the Epstein files. No outrage of Trump's support for Israeli genocide. So this is all diversion, all a diversion. And the people buy it. That's what they're into. They don't look at the facts. And you know, you were talking about Zelensky before. What you didn't mention, you know, you really knocked him down in terrible ways. You didn't say how good he was at playing the piano with his penis. Again, you can't make this stuff up. Everybody Google it up on YouTube. You can watch this little boy of nothing play the piano with his penis. And then you go back to Trump, and all he's interested in is making money and being in power. He could care less about we the people. And you're talking about the Ukraine war. So here we go. This is in your economic update in your Trends Journal about how this little boy of nothing, Lindsey Graham, this is on Tuesday, only a day away. He was on Fox Business or Monkey Business, whatever you want to call it. And he goes on to say that President Trump will put 100% tariffs on India, China, and Brazil if they buy oil from Russia. These three countries account for 80% of Russia's crude exports, which is helping to fund the war in Ukraine. He goes on to say, if they keep buying cheap Russian oil to allow the war to continue, we're going to tear the hell out of you. And we're going to crush your economy because what you're doing is blood money. Hey, little Lindsey Graham, a guy with a pecker that big if he has one, a little warmongering freak, how about the hundreds of billions of dollars the United States has sent to Ukraine? And how about the crap that Trump spewed out when he was running for president, that if he was elected, here, I want immediate peace with the Ukraine war. This is when he's running for office. We want to have peace on earth all over. Wait a minute. Peace on earth all over? Oh, what did you say about the Yemenis? We're going to annihilate you. Oh, another little fat boy draft dodger, same age as me. But anyway, that was Trump. He goes on. If I were president, I would have the Ukraine war settled in 1 day, 24 hours. How come there's no outrage at this lying piece of crap and now sending more of our money and weapons to Ukraine to keep the war going? Why isn't there any outrage? They have something about some guy that got caught screwing a chick or something on TV or something. Or did Taylor Swift have sex last night? This is what the people know about. What's new with the Kardashians? Where's the outrage? And again, you have outrage And again, St. Thomas Aquinas said, anger is fundamentally one of the passions of the soul, and like the other passions, is a part of human nature and has an appropriate role to play in the human pursuit of good when directed by reason. He who is not angry when there's just cause for anger is immoral. Why? Because anger looks to the good of justice, and if you live amid injustice without anger, you are immoral as well as unjust. And I was listening to when you took the break. Where are all these religions? Where are you? How come you're not out there protesting? Oh, what is the Pope? We put on a baseball hat from the Chicago White Sox? How come you're not over there in Gaza? Oh, they just bombed the Catholic Church? How come you're not over there stopping it? Where are the Quakers? What, are you dying in an earthquake? What are the Seventh-day Adventists? You waiting for the eighth day? This is serious what's going on.
Wow. Well, that will live. A brilliant piece of invective, Gerald. Let's break it down. The Pope, American Pope, for the first time, may not be in Gaza, but the Roman Catholic Cardinal Pizzaballa was there very bravely and very forthrightly. And if anyone deserves the Nobel Peace Prize, perhaps it's him. But he called out all these fake Christian politicians around the world that actually are not just silent at the slaughter of Jesus's own people in his own holy land, but are actively collaborating with the aggressor to genocide them, to annihilate them, to remove them completely from the face of the earth. The level of hypocrisy is beyond anything that you and I have seen in our not inconsiderable lifespans. Not since the Holocaust, 1939 to 45. Not since those days. And you and I were brought up in an era of those pictures, of those Belsen horrors, these starving, skeletal people. Are you telling me, as the editor of the Trends Journal, that you can detect no scintilla of interest or concern in the United States about what's happening there in Gaza? Really?
Absolutely. People have no idea what's going on. It's hardly in the news. Nobody talks about it. By the way, if you talk about it, you're an anti-Semite, all right? Oh, that's the Trump administration. Oh, yeah, they're closing down all the colleges, throwing kids out of school because they're protesting against the genocide. You're not allowed to say genocide. And again, going back to Trump, it's the hypocrisy. And again, this is before when he's running for office. You ready? I'm moving quickly to end wars, settle conflicts, and restore the planet to peace. I want peace. I'm not going to start a war. I'm going to stop wars. I want to see the Middle East get back to peace and real peace. Oh, wait a minute. Didn't you bomb Iran? Aren't you giving all the money to the genocide to keep it going over there? The people here have no idea what's going on. There's no outrage at all. And again, going back to, where are all these Catholic priests out there? Well, as I say, where the Quakers die in an earthquake? How come they're not in the street every day? Oh yeah, this one guy went there for one day, this cardinal. Where's the Pope? They bombed the church. They killed all those people. Again, every day, we write about what's going on here. Every day they're slaughtering scores, hundreds of Palestinian people starving to death, going for food, bombs away. Oh, you talked about the Holocaust? How about all the gypsies that were killed and all the other people that were killed in the Holocaust too? No, don't talk about them. Don't talk about them. We only could talk about the Jewish people being killed. And again, I want to make this 1,000% clear. I'm an Italian, right? If I came out against Mussolini, does that make me an anti-Italian? If I come out against genocide, does that make me anti-Israeli? As I said, 3 of my last 4 girlfriends were Jewish. Every one of my Jewish friends are against what's going on here. But you're not allowed to talk about it. This is an outrage. And there's no outrage there. And you talked about that little boy Starmer before. A little boy of nothing. Oh, how about him and that little Catson Macron with a pecker the size of a pencil if he has one at all? Oh, now they're uniting that if Russia attacks, they're going to join in to fight back Russia? And you got that little Mertz boy over there in Germany, the BlackRock guy? $1 trillion to borrow money to build up their defense? Because we have to stop those Russians? We're going to build our infrastructure too so we can hold the tanks? Oh, you mean Operation Barbarossa, where the Germans only killed how many? 25 million plus Russians? Oh, and now we got to support the Germans? You didn't like World War II? Maybe you like World War I? Where's the outrage?
Well, it's not in short supply between thee and me. Let's move on to the Obama affair. As I say, I can chew gum and walk in a straight line at the same time. Just because I am against Trump doesn't mean I'm for Obama. Obama and his team did perpetrate the Russia hoax and take the world to the brink of World War III. They lied to the whole of the world. They lied that Russia had rigged the 2016 presidential election. Now, DNI Tulsi Gabbard has now got the goods, although the goods were always there. The last DNI did not declassify them under Donald Trump's first administration. He could have, but he didn't. But she has. What happens next in the Obama affair?
Again, I agree 100%. Again, we wrote about it in the Trends Journal as it was happened. The whole Russiagate thing was made up. And it total lie. But going back to Obama, I call him the Nobel Peace of Crap Prize winner. Hey, I'm for peace. You elect me, I'm for peace. As soon as he gets elected, what happens? Afghan troop surge. Oh, that little arrogant guy betrayed us. Oh, he's working for KKR now. That little arrogant piece of scum crap. Oh, the Afghan troop surge, killing more people there. Oh, the Obama, I want that guy Gaddafi out of there. I want that guy Assad out of there. Oh, that Obama? So yeah, they're going to keep this going. But again, you mentioned it before, it's going to be a distraction as well. And the people care more about this than they care about, again, the genocide, the war. Again, Trump lied his way, said he was going to end the Ukraine war in 24 hours. Oh, and now that I'm elected, now that I'm in office, before I get inaugurated, I'm going to end that war, right? All right? And now he's sending more weapons. So they're going to keep using this as a distraction. And again, the Epstein thing is a big deal among the people, and these other things don't matter about anything. So they're going to keep going with the Obama thing. No question about it. No question about it.
And finally, Gerald, what about poor Ghislainemaxwell? She's serving a 20-year stretch for trafficking children to nobody. In fact, Jeffrey Epstein himself never existed. He was all a hoax, a mirage. The Deputy Attorney General of the United States government is visiting her in prison today. What's going to happen there?
I don't know. But again, it's look how many times. If this was a T-shirt that I did when Bill Clinton ran for office in 1992. You see it?
This
is the Clinton.
The Trends Journal is always ahead.
This is the Clinton that how many times was he with Epstein? This is the Clinton. I didn't have sex with that woman, Monica Lewinsky. She only sucked my baby. All right? All right? This is the whole thing going on. There's a lot of crap behind this, from Gates to one after another. And Trump On and on and on. So they're going to do everything they can to distract the American people's attention to this. And it goes back, again, Epstein hung himself. Oh, the camera went dead for how long? I mean, what a bunch of crap. He hung himself. Oh, the guys that were in the prison, we were on a coffee break. What are you talking about? Some crap they made up. They killed the guy. They killed him. Again, how many times was Clinton with, how many times was Clinton with Epstein? Dozens. So they're going to cover it up. They're going to get the people's attention off it. And one of my other sayings is, when all else fails, they take you to war. They get your mind right off it. And you need no more further proof than what's going on in Israel. People forget about the 39 weeks of judicial protests going on in Israel before Hamas attacked on October 7, 2023. According to the words of Isaac Herzog, the president of Israel, quote, there's a civil war going on. Everybody forgot about that. Hamas attacks, boop. Everybody forgot about what Netanyahu was doing, trying to pass the Judicial Reform Act so he wouldn't be brought up to charges for what he's being accused of. So again, when all else fails, they take you to war. So that's what's going to happen. Trump goes down, war goes up.
Wow. Gerald Celente, Trends Journal publisher, founder of the Trends Research Institute. It's always a real pleasure to interview you, I promise you. Thank you, Gerald, for joining us. Let me take a quick break and then your calls coming next. Stay tuned.
A new dawn has broken, has it not?
He had that Clinton thing. His eyes were round and big and smiley, and he was very charming.
He became this incredible pop idol kind of prime minister.
I think most people who have dealt with me think I'm a pretty straight sort of guy, and I am.
New Labour was backed by the most powerful media interests because they realised he was representing them.
He was caught red-handed trading policy in return for hard cash from a businessman.
America has no truer friend than Great Britain.
Both Bush as well as Tony Blair are now wanting to plunge the world into a Holocaust.
JP Morgan paid him off for the Iraq war. The man is a war criminal.
Is Tony Blair a war criminal? In my opinion, yes.
Most definitely.
The pursuit of money has become the dominant theme in your life.
All these relationships are, in most people's estimation, corrupt relationships.
No previous Labour Prime Minister has behaved in this shameful, money-grubbing way.
How do you sleep at night? You know, it's that. It's as a person.
Okay, the poll tonight, will Obama be charged over Russiagate, yes or no? I've got to tell you, not even 20% on average of the people who have voted, now 24,000 of them, on this poll, not even 20% believe that Obama will be charged over Russiagate. Get your vote in on Telegram, on X, on the YouTube community poll, or on the YouTube stream. The numbers again, let me remind you, it's toll-free in the United States and Canada, +1 844 944 3344. It's free of charge in Britain and Ireland, 08081 96 5522, and the worldwide number 0044 203 966 2625. Let's hit the phones and take Alan in Liverpool on line 1 about the Starmer Labour government. Go ahead, Alan.
Good evening, Mr. Galloway, and it's a pleasure to talk to you, mate. I just want to explain.
I'm
50 odd now. I've been voting for a long time, even though the last election I didn't. I would have done if you would have had a candidate stood for in the constituency where Maria Eagle currently stands. I'm completely disgusted with the political system, George. I'm completely disgusted with the political system in our country. It's with the obvious control of the Zionist lobby over all the major parties, and for me, the obvious corruption going all the way back to the witch known as Thatcher. Is voting going to really work? Isn't it now time for mass civil disobedience, including non-payment of council tax, for example, and to rid ourselves of these evil warmongering entities? And once again, thanks a lot for allowing me on your show.
Well, God bless you, Alan, and thanks for your kind words. Voting itself will not change anything, and in any case, we only get to vote every 5 years. So we've only, if we're lucky, you and me, have got a couple of general elections left, maybe fewer than those. So voting itself does not change anything. It has to be voting plus the building of a mass movement that can assist in the election of better members of parliament who are not a part of the uni party. I advocate for a Jeremy Corbyn-led popular front movement like Mélenchon began in France, where all the socialist and radical forces can march behind Corbyn in a popular front in their own clothes, if you like. We, at the same time, encourage peaceful civil disobedience where it takes us forward and not where it takes us back. So blocking all the roads blocking all the bridges over London on the Saturday before Christmas does not take us forward. It turns people against us. So one has to be careful that civil disobedience, peaceful civil disobedience, with the full intention of paying the price for that civil disobedience. That's the norm, was the norm in our country, was the norm in the whole Gandhiist movement for independence in India. Sometimes the law is an ass, and a case in point is the one that we can't name just in the last couple of weeks, and I spoke about it at some length in my last monologue. You're going to end up arresting thousands of people, maybe tens of thousands of people, maybe even hundreds of thousands of people, and then your law is completely inoperable because it is unjust and is widely seen to be unjust. And everybody involved knows that it's unjust. The judges know, the juries know, the lawyers know, the police know, the parliament knew when it was passing this law with only 36 votes against in a parliament of 650 people. Only 36 people had the guts to vote against it. And now we're in a situation where the law and the police are being reduced to ridicule. They're battering old ladies to the ground. My friend Audrey White in Liverpool, where you're calling from, just at the weekend, a couple of weekends before that, an 83-year-old Church of England priest, an old lady. They're making a fool of the police. They're making a fool of the judicial process. We have a duty to struggle against such unjust laws. If a law is in breach, clearly, of justice, then people have to be ready to stand up against it. Alan, I promise you next time we will have a candidate, maybe even your good self. Now, you can send me comments on YouTube by scanning the QR code now. Keep it clean and we'll put it on. Christopher Todd says, people like Obama always get away with it until their empire collapses entirely. The pattern continues. And Mel says, Obama is too protected by AIPAC, or have they now abandoned him because he's black, even if a war criminal too? And Richard Tyler says, Nazi recruitment centers being bombed by Russia are being cheered in the streets. And Lewis Sharp says, Ukraine began with the color revolution and will end with a color revolution. I think you're right, Lewis, and maybe very soon indeed. Ramplency01 says the one who came up with the Russia hoax was Hillary Clinton, but after Trump's and MAGA's rant of lock her up, not a peep about her name came up in this investigation. Let's hear from Washington, D.C. about Obama, because Gregory is on line 2. Go ahead, Gregory.
How you doing, George? Greetings
All
from
good, brother.
Washington,
Thank
D.C.
you. Go ahead. Thank you,
I
my
don't think
friend.
anything will happen to Obama. This will be ignored just like everything else. No clergy, no senators, congressmen, no one of any consequence has protested what is going on in Gaza. And Gerald Celente is right. He's right. Nobody's going to lift his finger. If the Pope couldn't put a statement out to protest what is going on in Gaza, what's left for the rest of us? What's left?
Well, yeah, he did, though. The Pope did. We mustn't elide the Pope is not the last Pope. I'll grant you that. But even this American Pope spoke out very strongly about the destruction of the Holy Family Church and the murder of 3 parishioners and the wounding of the parish priest, which Israel has just investigated itself, and has blamed deficient munitions that went astray. They nearly took out the cross on the church, but it was all stray bullets. So the Pope has spoken. I agree with those who say that the Pope should go to Gaza. I believe that everybody should go to Gaza. I believe the Chinese government should sail a hospital ship into the harbor, and I've been saying that to you on this show for the whole of the last 21 months. I believe that all the governments of the world, through the United Nations, have got to send troops to Gaza. It is, after all, internationally recognized as illegally occupied territory. Israel does not own Gaza. Israel cannot stop any foreign government, with a mandate from the United Nations or not, from entering Gaza. The people there are an international responsibility, legally speaking. And so any member of the international community, you'll remember that old saw, I think it was Born in Washington, the right to protect, RTP, where Clinton and Blair arrogated to themselves the right to intervene anywhere in the world to protect people at risk. Well, if there's no case in Gaza, I don't know where there would be. Gregory, thanks for that call. Now, let me tell you about a big donor this week. First, we had this email from Chris in South Yorkshire. George, just made my first donation via the MOATS.tv website. I was gobsmacked by how easy and fast it is. I think you should stress this aspect to all viewers. Well, a double thanks, Chris, for that, for the donation and for the advice. It could not be easier. You literally click a button and you have donated to keep this show going. But am I in a position to talk about? Yes, I am. These legends donated so generously this week. Derek Marshall, James Glass, who's a weekly donor. You can donate on a regular basis. Bart Verkauteren, Allah Salman, and a very special thanks to Abdul Razak Siddiq, who made a very significant donation this week. 77,000 Philippine pesos. That's the equivalent of 1,000 British pounds. Thank you, Abdul Razak. Thanks to all of our big donors. Thanks to all of our regular donors. Thanks to all of our simple donors of £1, €1, or a dollar. But Abdul Razak said this: Salam, peace, dear brother George. May Allah bless you for fighting for innocent people who are every day being murdered, starved to death. I'm sending my initial help for your show of 1,000 great British pounds for the sake of Allah. That's from Abdul Razak Siddiq. If there are people out there who can do what Abdul Razak did, I urge you to do it, because this show is valuable. This show is important, and we simply have to keep it on the air. Let's take a legend, Sarkar in Glasgow, on Zelensky. Sarkar, go ahead, sir.
Thank you so much, George, for taking my call. George, it's about one of the biggest crooks in the world, which people like yourself, Scott Ritter, Richard Midhurst, everyone had been warning for the past 3.5 years. It fell on deaf ears. The Western governments need to do two things. First of all, apologize to you all for not taking your word seriously, or the least they can do is at least say thank you for at least exposing the truth about that man for the past 3.5 years. The only sad part is his countrymen realized it too late. It reminds me of that Leonard Cohen song, Everybody Knows the War is Over. Everybody knows the good guys lost. The poor stay poor, the rich get rich. This guy Zelensky, oh my God, where to start? But I'll keep it very succinct. His own country people have figured out what he's been doing, siphoning off the funds. His own country people have realized, the world realized. Anthony Blinken, before Trump presidency was there, went to his country, and a few days later, he brought in the martial law in his country to stop an election happening. Okay, that was the seeds being planted. People should have known then, but don't know what to say. Now in his country, the anti-corruption board want to investigate what is going on with all the aid which is being sent. Guess what? Using his martial law powers, this little tin pot dictator now wants to take away the powers of the anti-corruption body. Hey ho, there's no election. No one can investigate what's going on with his funds. And the fact, shamelessly, for 3.5 years, the Western governments have been funding him. Do you not think, George, now it's time that straight up, okay, they won't talk to Putin, I can understand their egos are too big. They should just pick up the phone, call Zelensky and say, listen, not a penny more aid for you. If any more aid is needed, give us a full bloody balance sheet for the past 3.5 years about all the assets which has been brought. What has our money, your taxpayers' money, been put to use for this rubbish war? Will the Western government leaders have the backbone to do that now, George?
Well, a very, very powerful call, as always, from Sarkar in Glasgow, one of the legends of the show. And as you spoke, I felt I was wincing with psychological pain, because what Trump said in the White House this very day, when he called Zelensky a thief, he said there's $350 billion missing. Our intention was that the anti-corruption board would get to the bottom of where it went. And lo and behold, Zelensky has abolished taken control of the anti-corruption board that was going to investigate himself. The level of chutzpah involved in that, I'll leave the rest of you to measure. But the point I'm making is now the American president is saying, the Spectator is saying, the Financial Times is saying, and the Economist is saying, everything that we said for the last 3.5 years. And when we said it, these same people lashed us, slandered us, labeled us, algorithmically slandered us, censored us, threatened us, put us on death lists for saying what is now being said by everybody that attacked us for saying it when it really mattered, when the money was being stolen, and when the war could still have been stopped. Another of those who suffered that lash is my good friend Chay Bowes, political commentator based in Moscow. And he's coming up, as it happens, right after this short break. I promise you, You'll want to hear him. Stay tuned.
You know, and it's a very, thank you for, you know, I'm a big fan of your show, Gigi. Great debate, great. And I'm Scottish. I'm very passionate about what's happening there, you know. I had a great mom. She was Scottish, Mary McLeod. She taught me well. She taught me well at everything, including golf. I love Scotland, and I love the Scottish food. It's great food. I said to Melania, you know, haggis. Look at that. What's more Scottish than that? Me. I am that haggis. She said, what, thin-skinned and full of crap?
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
Will Obama be charged over Russiagate? 25,000 people have now voted, and still it is overwhelmingly the view that he will not. Now, Chay Bowes, dear friend of mine, Moscow-based, political commentator extraordinaire, and a great Irishman too, joins me on the mother of all talk shows. Chay, let's begin, can we, with little Zelensky. I'm looking at my watch. Is he still the so-called president? Will he last the day, the week, the month? What's your take on what's going on? It's clear he's been abandoned by his former friends.
Yeah, very interesting times. And I've been writing about this. The blood has been in the water for quite some time. He's been a bit of a Teflon Don as well. He's dodged and weaved. Because remember, when you talk about corruption in Ukraine, it's not a new story. Zelensky's story goes back well over a decade, to beyond Maidan. Zelensky made his money, remember, in the media, performing in Russia, speaking the language he grew up speaking, of course, in Kryvyi Rog in Ukraine. He was taken under the wing, if you like, of a very powerful oligarch, a guy called Ihor Koiminsky, a man who the U.S. State Department said had defrauded the Ukrainian National Bank of billions of dollars, and who was a wanted man for quite some time. Fell out with Zelensky when Zelensky came into power. He tried to clean house. So the corruption goes back a long way. Andrei Yermak, the chief of staff of Zelensky, who many people say is the shadow boss of Zelensky's cabinet, was a producer for Zelensky in his company called Kvartal 95, which means Quarter 95, which is the part of the city they grew up in. So he basically transplanted his own little cabal into government when he got elected by shock, when Koiminsky platformed him on his vast network in Ukraine. He owned basically the entire media at the time. And Zelensky got his lawyers, he got his money, he got his muscle, and he got elected. After, by the way, starring in a program called Servant of the People, which was a comedy, essentially, about a teacher who wanted to battle corruption and got elected as president of Ukraine. So reality, imitates fiction. And the name of Zelensky's political party is called Servant of the People Party, after the comedy TV show he started. So there's the framing of this. Zelensky gets into power. 2019, he's elected by a landslide, over 70% majority against Petro Poroshenko, another oligarch. And remember, Ukraine is an exquisitely corrupt country. The US State Department wrote report after report, the British, the French, the European Union, about how corrupt this country was, endemically corrupt. He gets elected in 2019 on the promise that he'd end the simmering civil war in the east against the Russian-speaking majority in Donbass, Lugansk, and the Crimea issue, and he would tackle corruption. Here we are, 6 years later, Kiev is burning, corruption is out of control, it's mushroomed. He has become a de facto dictator, which you and I have been saying for several years about him, and we've been pointing out the endemic corruption. We've, as you say, been given the pleasure of being put on the kill lists associated with the Ukrainian secret police, the Mir Taborets list, which I'm on, arrested, deported from EU countries, maligned, lied about. I'm sure they haven't stopped. They're not finished with us yet. But now the client media, which was so instrumental in appointing Zelensky as some Churchillian figure, which you've often spoken about, ridiculously, are now have been deployed and been briefed. I'm absolutely certain of this, that they've been briefed in London and in Washington that Mr. Zelensky's days are done. That's why people like the Kiev Independent, which is ridiculously named propaganda rag in Kiev, funded 90% to the tune of 90% by US aid, is now saying that Zelensky has betrayed Ukraine's democracy. As you say, the Spectator, the Times of London. So the client media is now turned on him. People are in the streets protesting this evening, as they were last night, which seems to be quite an organic protest. Now, interestingly, I've been told by sources in Kiev, who I'm in touch with, that the protests are only allowed to go on because the US Embassy and the British Embassy and several EU embassies have warned Zelensky's government not to clamp down on the protests. This is a very important piece of information. They've been told, do not interfere with these protests. They're to be allowed go on, and potentially they will grow. So this is quite remarkable stuff. So Zelensky, the background to what actually happened with these anti-corruption bodies, which many people are saying these are the last remnant of independent scrutiny of Zelensky's regime. Actually, they're not that independent. They're actually funded by the United States and by the British. And those that funding is deployed in order to keep an eye on Zelensky, to make sure he knows that, he doesn't have it all his own way. Now, he's clamped down on them. I'm told by my sources on the ground that Zelensky was told by the SBU that he was about to be investigated, and his central circle were about to be investigated for massive corruption. And there was about to be an investigation deployed by these two groups. And he hit first. He went and killed them in their bed, essentially, with this legislation which defangs them, stops them being able to operate with any impunity inside the regime. So he hit first. The Western sponsors are now very, very angry. We've got talk in the European Union even of some kind of sanctioning of the Ukrainian attempt to join the EU. So it's a remarkable development. We're really watching the pillars come down now. And as you say, this is nothing new for you and I, George. We've spoken about this here many times. We've had great conversation. We've spoken in Moscow about it. We saw this. We were vilified, pilloried for attempting to tell the rest of the world this, where their tax dollars was being spent. And now we see the client media, who also have pilloried and undermined us, basically agreeing with what we said all along. So it's a remarkable space to be working in, you'll agree.
We should write a book. We were right about everything, and so we were. Now, Chay, the delegation, we'll call it the Zelensky delegation, but it might not be by the time they get back, is in Istanbul, as are the Russian negotiators. What is there to negotiate about, and what do you think is likely to be the outcome of this third round of talks?
Well, I can tell you now, the negotiations ended in Turkey after about 35 minutes. They ended very quickly. And I've just posted on my Twitter that I believe that they ended very quickly because the Ukrainian delegation, which of course is Zelensky's delegation, probably have other things occupying their mind. They probably want to get back to Kiev as the wheels come off to a great extent, to either do a deal or to sort of try and hold this thing together. Now, what would have been discussed, of course, these are led by a very, very able man, Vladimir Medinsky, a historian, a very, very smart guy, 4 degrees, very, very wise man. He's been in charge of these. He's been actually remarkably productive given the intransigence of the Ukrainian side, delivering on, swaps of bodies. Another interesting discussion point potentially is that, over 6,000 Ukrainian bodies been given back. I think the Russians have got under 100 in return. Again, which puts pay to a lot of this fantasy that there's 1 million dead Russians. I think it's complete projection. So prisoner exchanges of the dead, unfortunately. I think that was all that we were hoping for, maybe seeing more of, because it seems that as Zelensky, and this is something you'll be aware of, but our viewers may not be, Vladimir Zelensky was put under vast pressure, huge pressure, by the disproportionately influential far-right neo-Nazi brigades and battalions Svoboda, Tornado, Azov, when he first came to power, not to concede any territory to the people in the east, not to allow them autonomy, not to essentially go along with the Minsk Accords, which would have ended this war. That influence and that threat to Zelensky is very acute at the moment, because they see themselves really as almost a Weimar, the Freikorps at the moment in Ukraine, that they will prevent a deal being done. So Zelensky on one side of the room, he's got these very, very aggressive ultra-far-right, Banderite factions who are very powerful, who are in charge of some of the biggest assault brigades in the Ukrainian army. Remember, Ukraine has an army that has men under arms to the point of about 1 million men, essentially, if you look at the last 2 years of war. A lot of them are very disgruntled at how Zelensky has treated them, whether they're pulled off the street or whether they're activated in a very far-right nationalistic way. They are going to return to Kiev, and there's active threats been made against Zelensky now. So he's in a very, very, very difficult position. He's run out of road, it seems, with his friends in America. The Europeans know they can't supply any more weapons in real terms to Zelensky's regime. They know that because they don't have enough weapons to defend themselves from this imaginary Russian threat. The missiles just don't exist. Russia's out producing them by a factor of 4 to 1. And that's according to Mark Rutte, the hapless NATO boss. So he's really in a very difficult position right now. And his options are, as so, in my view, either skips town, does a deal with his Western partners on territory, maybe up to the Dnieper, depends on the Russians, of course. The Russians are not even being factored into the discussion at the moment as they encroach further and further. There's less and less Ukraine to discuss. Or he does a deal with the right and he agrees to purge the government to become an even more draconian dictator within Kiev. So we're going to watch this bonfire go up, I'd say. Maybe not rapidly. Things happen very quickly when they kick off. But I think at the moment what we're seeing is a really remarkable abandonment of Zelensky by his so-called partners in the West. And you know that because the client media has been briefed. It's time to light a fire under this guy.
So if the talks collapsed, 35 minutes, scarcely worth going, they didn't even need a hotel room for the night, then the war goes on. How goes the war at this moment in time?
Well, I mean, as regards what's happening, Russia is incrementally taking more and more territory on the battlefield, in the east particularly, also in north of Kharkov on the Russian border, and of course in the Sudzha direction, Sumy, Sudzha being one of the towns in Kursk that was occupied, which the Ukrainians were pushed out of. Russia is incrementally moving forward. You got to understand, here in Russia, the war goes on, but the war has been fought on the basis of a back burner type of war. It's a conflict that's not that visible in society. People are preoccupied with getting along. As you've been here, you will see very little trace of this war that is being fought. It's still being won by the Russians, and we know that in Pokrovsk, this exceptionally important city in eastern Ukraine, which is the hub, if you like, of several very important defense nodes on the whole front, is now essentially operationally encircled. And there's been a significant 7-kilometer breakthrough very nearby in the last 24 hours as well. So it seems it's not only a political collapse and pressure for Zelensky, there's also a significant risk that the entire eastern front could collapse. And they'd have to re-establish defense lines closer to the Dnieper. So there's nowhere that it's going well for Zelensky. And I mean, in reality, there's not much anybody else could do if they replaced him tomorrow with Mr. Zaluzhny, the Ukrainian ambassador to the UK who can't speak English, or with anyone else, even from his cabinet. It's hard to see who could put a stop to this without sitting down with the Russians, getting real and saying, let's do a deal, let's end this war, let's build some sort of future for the remnants of Ukraine and try to get our people back to rebuild the country. This, in my view, is the only way that anybody will be seen and treated plausibly by the Russians. At the moment, the Russians don't see any reason, and they're completely right, why they should sit down with the Zelensky cabal. I mean, there's absolutely no reason to do so. Russia has everything to gain by keeping going, achieving its aims, which it set out in 2022. I mean, they don't see any value whatsoever in engaging with the Zelensky regime on anything other than the mundane realities of prisoner swaps and the exchange to the dead.
Now, finally, Chay, the 50-day ultimatum absurdly delivered by Donald Trump. Of course, the clock is ticking. I don't know how many days there are left, probably 40, maybe a little over 40, after which economic nuclear war begins with 100% tariffs on third countries that trade with Russia, with cataclysmic potential to the world economy. As it happens, the 50-day deadline occurs when President Putin is in Beijing, sitting with Xi Jinping, celebrating the anniversary of the Chinese role in the war, in the Second World War. It's very few people know that the Russians lost the most people in the Second World War, and the Chinese lost the second most in the Second World War. So it's a very big deal, the anniversary of the Japanese invasion of China and all the slaughter that ensued. And now it turns out that Trump himself might go to those commemorations, meaning all three of them would be under the gate of heavenly peace in downtown Beijing. Are you expecting that to happen? And what exactly is Trump's goal here? Does he want peace or does he want war?
Yeah, I mean, look, regarding the 50 days, the 50 days was pronounced by President Trump, as was the fact again and again that he would resolve this war in 24 hours. He just didn't mention which 24 hours. So I think we should take 50 days with a pinch of salt. The Russians here certainly don't consider it in any way remotely. It's almost like an early biblical verse. Maybe it's analogous or something, but it doesn't mean 50 days. That's the first thing I'd say. Second thing I'd say is, what does Trump really want? Trump wants the world to dance to his tune. And in his naivety, I think he actually did believe that he would be able to end the war in 24 hours because he's exquisitely ignorant of the reality of the situation in Ukraine, the history of the region, the fact that, you know, essentially Russia is being called an invader into territory that it controlled 200 years ago when his family were crofting up in Scotland. This was Russia. So there's an exceptional level of ignorance which is fueling this. He's obviously getting terrible advice from people like Keith Kellogg, whose daughter is, intimately involved in the Ukro scam, as I like to call it, running an NGO there. So he's maybe picked the wrong team to get his head around. I think the more time Trump spends and his team spends in contact with the Russian negotiators, who are, quite smart, who aren't prone to making these statements as Mr. Trump's team are. I think Rubio is a quite interesting guy. I think he's liable to, incisive analysis. I think Trump, and I always get into trouble for this, even here in Russia and everywhere when I say this, I think Trump is sincere to some extent in wanting peace. I think when he talks about dead people littering battlefields and stuff, I think he does want peace. Now, of course, if that was the case, he would have acted very quickly to stem the flow of weapons, money and cash to Mr. Netanyahu and co. But my sort of specialty and my area of interest is Europe, NATO, and Russia. So I do think he would like to finish it. I do think he feels put upon at the moment by the likes of Lindsey Graham, which he has to manage and has to keep on board to, throw the toys out of the pram about Mr. Putin, etc. And that brings us to whether or not he would go to China. I'm actually hoping to be in China at that meeting between Xi Jinping and Mr. Putin. And I think if there's going to be a meeting, I think it's going to be in Beijing. And I'll tell you why. I think it's because of Mr. Trump's ego. I don't think Mr. Trump wants to see Mr. Putin and Mr. Xi sitting down with the world's cameras watching as the wheels come off in Ukraine and as the war in Gaza rumbles on. I think Donald Trump, as a showman and as a businessman and this guy, wants to do a deal. I think he wants to be in the room and he wants to be there to show that. And I think that's probably going to drive his desire to be there. What could be achieved? I think, as we've seen and as you and I have spoken about, and I've said many times on the show, I think the Russians aren't going to perform a role written for them either in Whitehall, in the White House, and certainly not in Brussels. They know what needs to be done in Ukraine. They don't want their kids to have to fight this war. No deal is better than a bad deal. And it seems to be paying off. Drone production is huge. It's up. The economy is holding the course. It's under pressure, of course. The military is advancing. They're doing their job, and they're doing it with great expertise, as far as we can see, in basically dismantling this alliance of 50 countries, which are now freely admitting they're fighting a proxy war against Russia. Now they're freely admitting that they're losing it. Their man that they fronted as this Churchillian mastermind who's going to save Europe is now being led to the gallows by the very people who hoisted him up on their shoulders as the savior of European freedom. So, as Napoleon said, George, never interrupt your enemy when he's making a mistake. And I think the Russians now need to just sit back and watch the house burn down.
Now, finally, I said finally, but I've got to put this to you. Just dropped. The Wall Street Journal, which seems to be on a real crusade, Rupert Murdoch owned, of course, against Donald Trump. And I must tell you, I think they've got the goods on him. Trump says he's going to sue them and all that, but I'll be surprised if that suit reaches court. But they've just dropped the following. The Wall Street Journal reports that President Trump was informed in May that his name appears in the Epstein files. The Justice Department informed him in May, which would, of course, explain why he went from being determined to root out all these criminals in the Epstein files to what Epstein files? It's quite a show, isn't it? It's quite a circus, Jay.
Yeah, look, I mean, I posted something which I think just nails it. It's a young girl saying to her mother, well, they bake a cake in one of these 1950s memes. And the child is saying, Mummy, why won't the government release the Epstein list? And the mother turns to the daughter and says, well, that's because the government are the Epstein list here. I mean, let's take a step back, and be objective about it. You've been around the block, George. I mean, I'm in my 50s. If anybody believes that a man is prolific, wealthy, influential, and hungry for the spotlight, like Mr. Trump, wouldn't have come across Jeffrey Epstein, I wouldn't have been attracted into that like a moth to the flame of this very flamboyant man, one of the biggest property developers. Where did Mr. Trump make his money? Developing property. Where did he exert his influence? In high society in New York. It's a very small deck on that boat, and you're rubbing shoulders with this man. I don't believe for a minute that Mr. Trump didn't have relationships or contact with Jeffrey Epstein. I don't believe that for a second. I saw an article today by CNN, which reveals photographs of Mr. Trump with his two of his children in the company of Jeffrey Epstein. And of course, remember, CNN couldn't find or demonstrate to us that Joe Biden was, exceptionally demented as a leader. They couldn't find that the whole Russia hoax was a Russia hoax, but they could find these photographs. So there's a lot of people queuing up to put the knife into Donald Trump. So let's be objective and stand back and understand that. But at the nub of it all is the question you've got to ask yourself, George. Do you believe that Donald Trump had no contact with Jeffrey Epstein in the heady 80s, the early 90s, in this time where this very select and exclusive billionaires group were operating in the media and in real estate? Remember, That's where Jeffrey Epstein, we're told, this maths teacher who had no money in the late 70s, who went on to own the biggest private house in Manhattan and several aircraft, we're told he did it through real estate. Where did Mr. Trump make his money? Now, of course, I'm going to spit it out and wait until we have some actual evidence, because we also have to remember that the client media, which is now out to get Trump, were also, remember, aggressively trying to get Kamala Harris elected. So bear that in mind when you think about the motivation.
I always bear it in mind. I live in the luxury of being against them both. I'm against the Democrats, I'm against the Republicans. The more chaos between them, the better, from my point of view. And as I said to Gerald Celente earlier, I can chew gum and walk in a straight line at the same time. I want to see Obama in jail, but I also want to see the criminals around Epstein in jail. I'm balanced, fair and balanced like that. Chay Bowes, you are a terrific guest, and I'm really glad to see you again. I hope we renew our acquaintance in Moscow before very long. And Zane says hi. He says that Chay Bowes is a real top man. Thanks very much. God bless you.
A note to Zane, a real gentleman, a credit to his dad.
Thank you so much, Jay. Very, very kind. He's listening in the next room. Thanks so much. Let's take a quick break. Your calls next, right up to Gayatri's social media news roundup. Stay tuned. Let's hear from Mehdi. Go ahead, sir.
Hello, George. Thank you very much for taking my call. This is such an honor, because one thing I want to tell you is in 2003, I thought that you, I'll say it, I thought you were a prattling liberal idiot. 20 years later, I'm here honored to speak to you, to say live on air, I'm sorry, I should have listened to you back then. You're bringing the truth to what's going on out there. And one of the things is U.S. policy, whatever it is now, is our government. The problem is that it's run by people with absolutely no honor. They have no shame in what they will do to accomplish what they want. And I really think part of what's going on, that's driving what's going on in Ukraine, is that it's the possibility of all the corruption that it will uncover that has happened there with the influence of our country and NATO since 2014.
Yeah, you spoke extremely powerfully and very graciously, and I'm grateful for it. But you put your finger on, I think, something that's been in the back of my mind for a while. I grew up in a time, indeed I sat in Parliament for almost 30 years, during a time when there were certain standards. There were double standards, of course, and there was a great deal of hypocrisy, but the ruling elite had standards that they tried to keep up. Nowadays, that facade has been torn asunder. Now they're not even pretending to be honorable gentlemen and ladies. Now they're no longer pretending that their institutions, their great departments and ministries are in anything to do with contemporary politics other than an arm of the ruling party. My last word, Mehdi, I ain't no liberal, bruv. I wasn't back in 2003, and I ain't any more liberal today.
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
Let's go to Los Angeles, who wouldn't, where Joseph wants to talk about Reagan and Trump. Go ahead, Joseph.
Well, hi, George. It's a privilege to talk to you. Yes, I wanted to talk about... The
privilege is mine. Thank you, brother.
Oh, well, thank you. I wanted to talk about Ronald Reagan and Donald Trump. Now, a number of our last presidents here in Los Angeles and America, they would think that they were the Antichrist. They would say, like George Bush, they thought he was the Antichrist. And then the big one was Ronald Wilson Reagan. the number of his name being 666, Ronald Wilson Reagan, and his address was 666, and of course he's born on the 6th. But then he died, and people thought that was it. Now, but in the scriptures, it says the beast, that's the Antichrist, the beast that was, that's alive, but then he's not, that's dead. But then he is again, he resurrects. We believe that Ronald Reagan is going to be the one that's going to resurrect and be the Antichrist of the book of Revelation, chapter 13. He's buried in Simi Valley. He has the feet of a bear, meaning he made a stand in California. His movie career was in California, and his political career in 1966 as governor. Now, if you Google Ronald Reagan 666 or Ronald Reagan the Beast or Ronald Reagan the Antichrist, nobody matches up to the scriptures like Ronald Reagan. Now, President Trump has just put recently a photo image of Ronald Reagan in the Oval Office of the White House. Now, when that happened, that raised my antennas to make me believe it more. There are people today who believe that President Trump will be the Antichrist. I don't believe that. But I believe as of right now, he's in that system that's going to bring about the Antichrist.
Well, I don't know what to say to that, Joseph, but I bet you everyone's Googling Ronald Reagan, the Beast, right now. Look, we've been in the top 25 for politics this week in Italy, Mexico, and Norway with our podcast. We're in the top 40 in Ireland, Russia, and the Netherlands. You can download the MOATS podcast by scanning the QR code on your screen now. And you can listen, of course, to the weekly podcast via the MOATS.tv website, which is a destination I know you're going to visit because nobody wants to be the one who didn't contribute at least £1, €1, or $1 to tonight's show. Our old friend Declan is in Dublin. He says we need action. We do. Action this day across the board. Declan, welcome back.
Yeah, right. Well, I tell you, George, there's no shortage of Antichrist, that's for sure. And a lot of them, as it happens, come from Scotland. And I'd like to start by mentioning Mel Gibson's speech at Stirling Bridge in Braveheart, right? Where the Irish bloke says, great speech, but what do we do now? Now, I just want to tell you what I did in the hope that people like Jeremy Corbyn or anybody who says they believe in the people of the Middle East will do something on a bigger scale, or at least try as I did. I'm inundated with horror messages from Syria, right? Now, what I tried to do is I approached all the top Alawis in Germany, Scandinavia and elsewhere, and I said, I'll bring you to Ireland at my expense. I'll bring George Galloway, a very prominent Sunni that I don't want to mention, but he's an extremely prominent Sunni, a very prominent Christian, and I'll throw in a Shia for good luck, right? And they said, all well known, and they said they won't have anything to do with any of those people. And the reason is they're afraid, that they're afraid their lords and their masters in the Irish Parliament, the British Parliament, etc., will take a dim view of these people, which I'm sure they will. But the reason I had you and the others on my short list was that you'd cause a splash, right? That you won't go around kissing the feet of our lords and masters. Now, so they won't do it, but my hope is that, as in the Braveheart film, where at Stirling Bridge, where Mel Gibson makes that great speech based on Henry VIII once more into the breach for God, for Harry England and St. George, that lying in your bed, all you great people, many years from now, or not so many in the case of some of us, many years from now, that you trade all the days from this day to that day for one chance, just one chance to come back here and have a go at these people over the Middle East, right? Now, I know that you would certainly consider trading in all your days. I'd throw mine into the pot, but it's up to these people. I'm not picking on Jeremy Corbyn. I listened to him yesterday, making a half abstract speech and a half practical speech to actually do something practical. He's connected with Arsenal Football Club. He could try to do something there, right? I also I spoke to you recently about Taipei, and I also approached people, very well-known people, to buy Taipei beer. They make this craft beer in Taipei, and it's a great propaganda arm. It's not a big propaganda arm, because nothing in Palestine is. And all those well-known people, they won't even try to buy the beer. You know, just from my point of view, stick it up to the Israelis. So that's where we are. So I'd ask the great and the mighty.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the line from Braveheart is a good one, a great speech. But what we're going to do now, that's a very pertinent question. But I wanted to ask you, as a prominent Roman Catholic in Ireland, what you thought of the Pope's response to the murder of parishioners inside the Holy Family Church in Gaza, the very church that the late Pope Francis used to telephone on, FaceTime, every single evening, even when ill himself in hospital. Whether you thought the Vatican had risen to the level of the crime that was committed by defective munitions, Israel has now said. What do you think of the show so far on the hierarchy's response?
I'll answer that by saying that the head of the Foreign Affairs Committee of the Irish Parliament here in pro-Palestinian Ireland, is a member of Friends of Israel, right? When I brought leading Christian clerics from Syria to Ireland, the Catholic Church treated them like the poor relations. Now, they a big check, okay, but everything through the back door. When I was in Palestine, I met Father Manuel, the former parish priest of Gaza during Cast Lead. I met all the leading Latin Catholics of Palestinian Catholics who've done great work, and they feel like the most abandoned people there are. I went to Rome many times, to the Palestinian embassy, to meet Archbishop Capucci, the great Palestinian, Syrian and Pan-Arab nationalist. I only went to the Vatican once to look at their drains, as it happens, and I don't expect anything out of there, because they're just like the British Parliament. You know, we have to look at the bigger picture, right? You know, I can't look at the bigger picture. I look at the person in front of me, and that's the person who I have to take on. So they can make all the speeches they like. They can ask us to pray for. I don't believe in praying for the Syrians or the Palestinians, and I never have. They can pray for themselves. It's up to us to do something a lot more practical. And as Oliver Cromwell, of all people, said, pray to God, but row away from the rocks, and try to get a couple of those Palestinian kids out of the way of the rocks and the bombs and the bullets while you're at it.
Fabulous. Declan in Dublin, we need action. As Mr. Churchill used to write on the world's first post-it notes, action this day. But this day, there has been None. The big donors tonight, I need to acknowledge them. Tonight's top donors who've been on to the MOATS.tv website since we came on air: James Preston, David Miller, Norm Asif, Stuart Nimmo, and a huge thank you to Po Tam, T-H-A-M, who's a weekly donor. Thank you all. Bless you all. And remember, £1, €1, or $1 is the minimum fee we require from each and every person watching this show. You can also send super chats on YouTube. Tony Donovan just did now, and he sent $100 and says, in honor of my husband's mother, Joan Donovan Piccolo, who passed last week at the age of 93. Keep the truth-telling going, George. She was a lifelong woman of faith that welcomed and honored those that would do the same. You would make her proud. Peace from Los Angeles. May God rest her soul, and thank you for that very kind gesture. Simon is on the line from London on Epstein. Go ahead, Simon.
Hope you well, George. Yeah. Well, the media isn't neutral, as you know, especially not Rupert Murdoch and his empire, you know. As you know, earlier on this week, Wall Street Journal published this bombshell claim, rather ironically, that Trump wrote a sexually explicit letter to Epstein. But the real question isn't whether it's true, it's how Murdoch got this letter in the first place, you know. Murdoch isn't a journalist, he's a manipulator, you know. His whole history is about fabricated stories, political smears, and outright lies, from the Hillsborough disaster to pushing the Iraq war, you know. He shapes public opinion, not report. He doesn't report facts. So why is he, of all people, suddenly turning on Trump? Yeah. Now, the answer might not agree with George. It might be disinformation. This could be a deliberate decoy. And remember, Israel has done this before. It could be a deliberate decoy. It's something outrageous that collapses in scrutiny. People basically dismiss the entire Epstein case as being unreliable. Remember, the reason I'm saying this is because this man is a man who staunchly supports Israel, even more so than Trump does, you know. It's a classic example of poisoning the well. Muddy waters, so no one trusts anything, you know. Bottom line is, this isn't just about Trump or Epstein. It's about protecting the elite system, the bankers, the intelligence services, the foreign lobbies, and all the billionaires who effectively Israel supports and depends on this game.
Yeah, I mean, all of that is true, except one claim that you made, that Murdoch supports Israel even more than Donald Trump. Murdoch isn't sending hundreds of billions of dollars to Netanyahu's government in the form of cash and weapons. Murdoch isn't the one who's vetoing anything at the United Nations Security Council that encroaches on Israel's genocide. Murdoch isn't the one who's wrecking the International Court of Justice and the International Criminal Court. Murdoch isn't the one who is destroying any possibility of common action, economic sanctions, and so on. That's Trump. So whilst I absolutely acknowledge that ideologically speaking and theologically speaking, Rupert Murdoch is an Israel fanatic, he's not the one in the White House. It's the one in the White House that is committing the crimes against the Palestinian people. And the second point I disagree with, you said the importance is not whether the letter with a sexually explicit drawing is true, but more important is how Murdoch got it. I've never accepted that idea. If a piece of information is true, we need to know it. And once we know it, we have to make a judgment about it and how it affects our attitude to the subject of the paperwork. If I had written a private letter to Jeffrey Epstein, which made clear some extent to which I was on the same sexual wavelength as him, complete with a sexualized drawing, I might be sore if Rupert Murdoch got a hold of it, but it was me that wrote it, and it's my responsibility. And if I had written it, you would need to make a new judgment about me, about my character. So I don't actually agree that the provenance of the letter, and here's my view on it. We'll see if I'm right or if I'm wrong. I don't believe that Donald Trump will sue the Wall Street Journal for publishing that letter. And I don't believe that he can sue. And I believe the letter is genuine. There you go. I don't know. I'm not privy to any inside information on it. But as was pointed out by Chay Bowes, Donald Trump always seemed like a party guy to me. He's always seemed like a disco guy to me. To my amazement, he doesn't drink alcohol, but otherwise I would have said he was a champagne kind of guy. But I've got no doubt, given his sexual history, that him and Epstein, who were undeniably friends for decades, turns out that Epstein was even at Trump's wedding to Marla Marples in 1993. That's a long time ago. That's a long time that Donald Trump was friends with Jeffrey Epstein. And if you ask me, given what you know about Donald Trump's sexual peccadillos, his taste in very young girls, and I could, if you want me to, adumbrate the evidence for that. If you say to me that Trump never had anything to do with Epstein and Epstein's sexual depravity, I'd say it's pretty unlikely that Trump had nothing to do with that. And I've just read you, again, from Murdoch's Wall Street Journal, they're on it, believe me, they're on it, that the Department of Justice told President Trump in May that he featured in the Epstein files. And funnily enough, in June, Donald Trump began scrambling for cover over the Epstein affair. Now, when it says you were in the Epstein files, that could mean that your name, address, and phone number was in there, or it could mean that there's video of you having sexual relations with people that you should not have been. I'm not just talking about common or garden adultery. Of that, Trump is guilty on a grand scale with all of his wives. I'm talking about something that might be even darker than that, if you get my drift. Now, comments tonight. Paddy Nolan says, George, you think the American Pope was planted? No, I mean, I think the College of Cardinals elected him. He was not the Pope I was hoping for. But I'm suspending judgment for the time being. He's only just got his clogs under the table. Paddy Crowhawk says, 900 years ago, the Pope would have sent the armies of Europe to Palestine for the attacks on the Christians. Now he can barely muster strong words. In my mind, Travag says Russiagate proves that the FBI and CIA are enemies of the people and must be dismantled for our own national security. And Dejuma Boutique says Ukraine has been NATO's biggest money laundering effort. And Emily Morton says, apparently nuclear weapons have just arrived in the UK. I wonder who they are for. Brian's on the line in Utah, in the United States, on war. Plenty of war to choose from, Brian. Which one do you want to concentrate on?
How are you doing, George? There is plenty of wars to choose from at the moment. I was wondering your thoughts on Gaza at the moment, because like your other guest was saying earlier, there isn't much talk over here in the United States of the atrocities that are being, on a daily basis happening in that world. And it's like they can't even say the word Palestinian in their press conferences. They just say, the Gaza conflict, the Gaza conflict. No, it's an absolute genocide. And I was wondering, do you think that people over here will one day realise, and I'm talking like United States citizens that are, good law-abiding citizens that are trying to live the American dream, do they realise that this country over here right now at the moment is not free? Like, we do not have a voice over here to talk about anything against the establishment in power, you know, and they may be trying to do good things. They may be trying to do things on the fly, which I'm pretty sure they are. But, you know, people don't realise that this country is not free. Like, freedom of speech has been censored, and it's been censored at the complete wrong time. There's children dying in another country, and people are too scared to say, why are you doing this? Why are we funding Israel? Why is no one putting a complete red card on the whole thing? But it's people live in a delusion.
Well,
and
exactly.
I don't know why.
But what? Just to, if you like, inject a note of optimism, Brian. There are more people watch the mother of all talk shows than any show on any television station in the United States. So the number of people who are actually watching the so-called mainstream media is vanishingly small and becoming smaller by the day. More and more people are watching people much bigger than us. Joe Rogan, Tucker Carlson, and we're in there, we're in the mix. Far more people are getting their news and their analysis from shows like that than are from MSNBC or CBS or any of these other failing mainstream media outlets in the United States. Far more people are watching even this show than are reading the Wall Street Journal or are reading the New York Times. Of course, the United States mass media is refusing to discuss the great crime that's going on in Gaza, but social media is not. Joe Rogan is not. Tucker Carlson is not. And of course, I am not, and many people like me. So the number of people who do know has never been greater than it is today. And that is the reason why the majority of people in the United States now support Palestine, not Israel, including the majority of young Jewish people in the United States. So there's a big movement going on. It's just not reflected in the mainstream television and in the mainstream newspapers. Thanks as always, Brian. A Scotsman in Utah, one day he'll tell me how he ended up there. Now look, No to NATO is on tomorrow night. My good friends Warren Thornton and Patrick Walsh talk about Trump's 50-day ultimatum to Putin. That's at 9 p.m. tomorrow night on my YouTube, Rumble, and Facebook. That'll be great, actually. I'll be tuning into that myself. Last call before I go to Gayatri. Norma in Bristol on Gaza, the ultimate legend. Norma in Bristol. How are you this evening, Norma?
Well, I wouldn't really ask, but you're just doing me good. Well, I'll tell you what, it's anger, and it must turn into action. Now, Gerald Celente, wasn't his name? He said that there's not enough outrage, which is true, and we've got to retaliate now and stop these bullies. Because actually, like you said, that we should send troops into Gaza under the United Nations. I mean, that might not happen, but my goodness, it's no
well,
good
the
all
US
the talk.
would veto it at the Security Council, but we should try it. And if the US veto it, then others will have to unilaterally act. After all, that's what Britain and America did in Yugoslavia. The UN vetoed it, so they said they had a unilateral right to protect the people in Kosovo. So if it's good enough for Kosovo, it's definitely good enough for Gaza, no?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, actually, you've got to be positive. It might not happen, but, you know, the IDF and Netanyahu, they must experience their own medicine, and this cannot go on any longer. It's no good. We've got to be positive to action. That's my call.
Action
George.
this day. Thank you. We're always delighted to hear you.
Thank
and your
you.
voice sounds strong and always clear. The legend that is Norma in Bristol on Gaza is the last call of the evening, because I've got another legend. My good wife Gayatri is in the studio with the social media news roundup. What's rattling, Gayatri?
So we've covered Palestine, we've covered Ukraine, Russia. Now, if we compare the two, having been haunted this week by the images from Gaza where people are dying from hunger, let's see the comparison in headlines when it comes to these two front wars. New York Times says how Russia is using Ukrainians' hunger as a weapon of war. The Guardian says turning food into a weapon, how Russia resorted to one of the oldest forms of warfare. When it comes to Gaza, the BBC reports Gaza Health Ministry says, they say, 33 people died from malnutrition in 48 hours. It's obscene, and they think we are fools. I mean, this is when you were speaking earlier about the mainstream media. This is what they're useful for us to see through them. Them thinking that we're fools, but we're not. We can see right through them. How they can put these headlines in front of us when it comes to malnutrition and the propaganda about it. And meanwhile, from the Israeli front, claiming that these images that we're watching and are haunting us are actually false, and that Hamas is using images from children in Yemen dying of hunger. I mean, it's preposterous, as you like to say. That in a time where malnutrition in Gaza is killing children at a faster rate than the war itself in the past 21 months. Now, this picture, these very haunting pictures that, the Daily Express used as the front cover, we have seen this picture before, haven't we? This picture looks familiar, and something like it we have seen like 40 years ago. And when a picture like this was prompted 40 years ago, a certain Bobgeldof managed to organize successfully an all-star international charity concert, raising a whopping $50 million. Today, we can't even criticize the perpetrators of this, those who are causing this child to die. We are led to believe that this child is dying from hunger because he's a terrorist, or because he lives among terrorists and therefore has to be punished. Now, speaking of terrorists, on July the 22nd in 1946, that is yesterday on this date in 1946, July 22, 1946, there was another certain terrorist group that committed a terrorist attack aimed at the British administration HQ placed in the King David Hotel in Jerusalem. And this was a shocking terrorist attack that was front page cover everywhere across the world. And of course, this was committed by the Irgun group, which along with a couple of others then became the basis of the IDF. This bombing attack in Jerusalem killed 91 people. What is the contrast? What do you think about that contrast?
Well, they invented modern terrorism. Begin, the leader of the Irgun, and Shamir, the leader of the Stern gang, they invented modern terrorism. They blew up 91 British civil servants in the King David Hotel. They hanged British sergeants by piano wire in the orange groves of Jaffa and Haifa. They booby-trapped their bodies so that when their comrades came to cut them down, that they too were blown up. They sent bombs to Churchill himself. When Churchill was fighting Adolf Hitler, they sent a woman in with a bomb to blow up the British Foreign Office. They murdered the Swedish Count Bernadotte, a man who'd rescued Jews from the Nazis during the Second World War, but he didn't escape a terrorist murder by the Stern gang and the Irgun Zvi Leomi. They murdered the British minister, Lord Moyne, who Churchill had appointed as his envoy to the area. They have been murdering and engaged in terrorist warfare ever since they set foot in Palestine. And for them, this is, as you've heard me say before, the hardest, the deepest cut, the unkindest cut of all is that in the Israel-Palestine conflict, the terrorists are called the victims and the victims are called the terrorists. This is something that for 50 years has been impossible for me to accept. Now, you heard, I'm sure, Chay Bowes, or was it Declan? I think it was Declan. It was one of them. Or it was Gerald, I beg your pardon, it was Gerald Celente, quoting St. Thomas Aquinas. If you're not angry about what's happening right now, you're already dead. You might as well retire, give up. If this doesn't make you angry, then nothing will make you angry. Over to you, Gayatri.
Yeah, and not only is this, of course, Holocaust live streamed onto our television, onto our phones, on top of that, the perpetrators, the actual terrorists, are bragging about it. We have seen plenty of footage of the IDF showing off with the loot that they made from the houses of the Palestinians whose families they've killed completely. And the latest video that's out is of an IDF soldier saying that perhaps I've killed a girl, she's maybe 12 years old, but we're looking for babies. But there are no more babies. With a big smile on his face, live on camera. This is how can it not make us angry?
Yeah, I retweeted that today. Well, look, we could go on. I can see that we're both angry, righteously angry. And if you're not righteously angry about what's happening in Gaza right now, as we speak, then your soul is already gone. Gayatri, thanks for that social media roundup. I hope to see you soon. I have to close the show 5 minutes late. I'll get into trouble. I hope you've enjoyed it. I thought it was an above average show myself. And if you did, then please come back on Sunday at 7 p.m. UK time for the mother of all talk shows, Mothership, and bring another viewer or even two with you. It's been marvelous for me. I hope it was for you. Until Sunday, good night.
It's the mother of all talk shows. It's the mother of all talk shows. It's the mother of all talk shows.
Go get 'em, George.